Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Eichhoff, and I serve as the Associate Director of Alumni Relations at John Carroll University. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our next installment of A.C.E.S, our Alumni Continuing Education series. A.C.E.S was established in the spring of 2013 by the Office of Alumni Relations in the spirit of lifelong learning. The program offers enrichment opportunities for our alumni and friends through the expertise of members of our JCU administration, our faculty, and our outstanding alumni community. While our world is beginning to reopen a bit, we know we will continue to offer programs like this one online so that all of our alumni, regardless of where they call home, can connect with the university and with one another. Before I introduce our featured guest this evening, I wanted to share a few housekeeping items because this one's a little bit different for those who've been on some of our programs in the past. First, we encourage you to view the program in full screen mode. Additionally, please stay muted through the duration of the program. We do invite you to cook alongside of Chef Sferra if you are interested in doing so. I'm going to do my best. I encourage you to, if you have questions, utilize the chat feature. I'm going to do my best to interject if there are questions that you have about the prep that he's doing on a specific recipe. Otherwise, please use the chat feature and I will curate the questions for a traditional Q&A at the end of the program. It is now my honor to introduce our featured presenter this evening. Chef Bob Sferra is a member of the class of 1986. He began his culinary career in 1990 as he became chef's apprentice for renowned Cleveland chef Parker Basil for 7 years at both locations of Parker's restaurant. He attended l'École La Notre in Plaisir, France, and earned a grand diploma in pastry arts from the French Culinary Institute in New York City. After years of dabbling in different culinary forays and by popular request from his past clients and students, Chef Sferra launched Bob Sferra Culinary Occasions, a boutique catering and pastry business that is a reflection of his training and unique culinary point of view. He's led trips to the Italian region of Umbria, Florence, Siena, and Milan, and Provence in France. Later this fall, Chef Sferra will open his newest venture, Sophie La Gourmande, a cafe and patisserie, which will also serve as the home of culinary occasions. He has served on the boards of the John Carroll University Alumni Association and the LGBT Center of Greater Cleveland. He is a 2018 recipient of the Father William Bickle S.J. Volunteer Service Award given to the Outstanding Volunteer of the Year by the John Carroll University Alumni Association. We are incredibly fortunate to have Chef Sferra within our alumni community. I had a privilege of working alongside him on the Alumni Association board and consider him a friend. And we are so thankful he's here with us this evening. Bob, it's so great to see you. How are you doing this evening? And we're so glad you can join us.
Great, I'm great. That was quite an intro. Thank you very much, Eric. I really appreciate it.
So I'm going to turn the floor over to you. I know you have a few different recipes that you're going to share with us this evening. Again, to our guests who are going to be potentially cooking alongside, use the chat feature. I may try to interject if you have a question for Chef Sferra. Bob, take it away.
Thanks, Eric. That was a wonderful intro, and it is a privilege to work with the Alumni Association and the office, the Alumni Relations Office at Carroll, and working with Dave and Eric. And you guys are just fantastic, and thanks for your patience. I am technologically not very well skilled, so I have Chef Marie, who stayed after work today, to run the camera for me, and I will kind of whip through, and I really will try my best to whip through a couple fun recipes, a couple easy recipes. I've been cooking for a long time. I only spent 3 years outside of Carroll working in the business world until I went into the restaurant business, as you heard in my bio intro there. And now I've been doing this for about 31 years. I love it. I'm excited about it. I'm passionate about food and cooking every single day. I cook a lot less now as a business owner than I used to, but I certainly have my hands involved in everything. We're currently in my relatively small catering commissary, which is right down the street from John Carroll on Belvoir at Mayfield, with the anticipation that we're going to be moving to Lee Road to a much bigger kitchen, a wonderful project that I've been working on for years, but just broke ground on it in January of this year. So we had a terrible time during COVID. We survived. Business is better than ever. And again, we'll be moving to a new location with a new cafe and a patisserie come the fall of this year. So with having said all that, one of the things that I do with food is, and I learned this very early in my career, you know, you cook what's growing. So when Eric came to me and said, what are we going to do? What are the recipes going to be? Corn, tomatoes, peaches. That's literally what's at the market right now. So go out and get it, cook with it, make it easy. I think all three of these recipes are easy. The word souffle is a French preparation, which basically just means blown up. But a lot of people are usually get a little bit nervous about making a souffle. Do not be nervous about that. This is just like making a casserole with maybe a couple extra small steps, but it does work very well. We'll see how good my skills are, because if you are cooking along with me, I am going to be cooking in real time right here with you as well. The only thing I did in advance were the things that the recipe says. Grated the cheese. I didn't mince the garlic or the ginger, but I have that. And I started warming the butter on the stove top behind me for the souffle. To the butter, I'm going to add something very simple, just some peeled garlic. It's such a small amount of garlic. I'm just going to use a garlic press. Love a good garlic press. Garlic press is just going to take in all the garlic. It's kind of like a little gun. It shoots the garlic through there. If I'm using a larger recipe or I'm preparing something larger, I would throw the garlic on the board and chop it by hand, throw it in the food processor. But again, this is 3 cloves of garlic, a very small amount of garlic. Just went right through the garlic press. And that's the very first thing that I'm going to throw into the saute pan. I'm also going to put some ginger in there. Ginger is a very fibrous, very flavorful root. In order to cook with ginger, you have to peel the outer skin of ginger. It's pretty much inedible. And you also, so just if you wanted to peel this away, I know this is in the prep notes to do ahead of time. This is sort of the heart and soul, besides the corn of this recipe, the ginger, the corn, and the cheese. So here I did peel some ginger in advance. We only need about a teaspoon of ginger, and I'm going to grate this using a microplane grater, which is one of the greatest tools in the kitchen. And I'm going to add that to the saute pan with the garlic and the butter. Again, ginger kind of is the backbone of this recipe, but if you cook with ginger, unless you're infusing with it, you have to grate it, or you have to use a microplane to break it down, because it's very fibrous. If you've ever cooked with ginger before and you don't want to bite through those fibers. So we've got ginger going here. I'm going to put that in the saute pan. I may turn the heat up just a little bit to make sure we make it through the whole class in time. I will turn my back on you all a few times. I apologize for that, but it's got to be done because the stove is behind me. All right, there we go. We got ginger and garlic. That's going to go fairly quickly. I'm going to put the corn in there to kind of get it started. Fresh corn that was taken off the cob just a couple of hours ago. I'm going to add that. So the ginger and garlic are opening up. In my kitchen, I could smell that aroma. It's a big, beautiful aroma. That's really what you want to happen. The corn off the cob. First of all, buying corn, you want to buy fresh corn. I go pretty religiously to the farmer's market at Shaker Square every Saturday morning. It's from 8 to 1. That's a little pitch for them. But I buy sweet corn there. Again, this is the time of the year to cook with corn, to eat all the corn you can, because we only have until probably like mid-October, and then corn season is over. So really great corn. Usually we husk the corn here. After the corn is husked, I don't like the corn silk in this dish. So, and the people that work for me know that I'm kind of weird about corn silk also. So we take a little vegetable brush and just pull the corn silk off like that. Once the corn silk is off, then you're going to want to take this back. We use a mandolin a lot of times here to take corn off the cob. So a little bit of a complicated cooking tool. At home, you could use something. This is a great little tool that I bought at one of the cooking stores locally, called a corn zipper. You just hold the corn straight down and you just kind of zip right down. It's kind of rounded on one part, so it just takes the corn right off the cob. For this recipe, everything that's falling into the bowl you want. So if any of the corn milk, the corn is really fresh, comes off, you want to add that into the recipe as well, because it's just going to be flavored. So basically that was just simple, taking the corn off the cob. It's a great little tool. I think it's called a corn zipper. I think it's an OXO tool, but it's a great tool to have if you love to cook. I can smell ginger and garlic here, so I feel like I'm getting close to that very first step. And yeah, it's just a little bit of sauteing, a little bit of, not really browning, but just a little bit of breaking down the fresh corn, because this is going to be baked again in the next step. So I'm going to take the corn, the ginger, and the garlic back out of the saute pan. And then I'm going to continue. The basis for any souffle is to make a sauce that is made with a roux and liquid. And in this case, the roux, which is fat and starch, is going to be butter and flour. Once we have that sort of thickened up, that roux, then we're going to add milk to that. And that's going to be the beginning of our sauce. And we're going to turn that into a cheese sauce, which is going to then be thickened further with egg yolk. And the corn is going to be added back to it. And then eventually we're going to fold in the egg white. That's the first part of that recipe. Super simple, delicious. It smells amazing in here. This is going back on top of the stove. And the next thing I'm going to do is add the additional 2.5 tablespoons of butter. We're going to just let that quickly saute. Same pan, because there's nothing with flavor in that pan. We have the flavor of the ginger, we have the flavor of the garlic, we have the flavor of the corn. Kind of can't go wrong, so there's no need to start a different pan. Flavor is great. So we're going to just let that go. You want the butter to be completely melted before you go forward. I've got the flour ready. You want the milk to be at room temperature or warm. The milk at room temperature or warm, so that when you add it to the roux, it doesn't break down the roux, or if it's cold, it might make the roux very lumpy. I have a million kitchen tools in this kitchen, but I do not have, when you're making a roux like this, especially in a shallow pan, it's good to have a flat spatula. I don't have one of those in this kitchen, but a flat spatula kind of helps you hold down the fat while you're mixing in the starch, which is the flour. I'll bring this off the stove top and I'll bring it back to the counter in a few seconds here. Y'all could maybe look into the pan. So this is the point where we would sort of make our roux. Not a lot of fat, and I do have it spread out in this pan, so it's going to incorporate the flour pretty quickly. And then I'm going to put this back on top of the stove. Just to cook it for about 2 minutes. The main reason you want to do that is because you don't want the flavor of the flour to be in the finished product. If you're using a smaller saute pan, you won't see it quite as spread out as I have it. It's spread out that way because I wanted to use something bigger, so it kind of does the cooking process a little bit faster. Let's go back to the stove top. All right, while that is just cooking down a little bit, I know we're supposed to be stirring it. I'm not going to stir it. But while that's cooking down a bit, let's get ready for the egg. In a souffle, you need to have egg white. That again, the word souffle means blown up. In order for it to blow up, you need the egg white. The egg yolks are going to help to bind this white sauce that we're making together with the corn and the cheese. All right, so I've got a KitchenAid mixer here. I'll show you one of my little eggs at room temperature. Eggs at room temperature are going to produce the best egg white, do the most volume. We're just going to smash that right down on the surface of the table, gives us a nice opening. I'm going to take these eggs out. So this is going to be the egg white. It's going to go in here. And then we're going to put the egg yolks in a separate bowl because those are going to end up back into the other mixture. We have a nice little opening there, more of the egg white. We have a gym next door, so in case you hear any background music, they are having a little evening session over there. Oh. All right, our third egg. Easy. I don't smell anything bad happening behind me yet, but it's probably time to look back at that roux. We're going to make a little bit of noise, but it should be very fast because the egg whites were at room temperature for about an hour. We're going to whip those up in the KitchenAid stand mixer. So I'll talk a little bit loud while that's happening, but again, that probably will take no more than 1 minute. All right, the roux is sort of nicely cooked out. Once the roux portion is nicely cooked out of all of it, I'm going to add the corn mixture back in. Again, this is going to thicken everything up. This is all very nice and warm, and that is going to help to support the amount of cheese that's going into this recipe. Gruyere cheese, a really wonderful version of a Swiss cheese that has just so much flavor to it. That's going to be added in next. We need the cheese to melt. So again, we're going to kind of capture the heat from the roux and the corn mixture. Thank you, Chef Marie. And then now in real time, if you wanted to do this at home, you can take this mixture back out of here. And actually, we have a minute, so we could do that. We're going to take this mixture back out. You're going to want to let this cool for just a moment before you add the egg yolks to it. This is a single batch of this recipe is relatively small, and it'll fit nicely into just like a simple souffle dish. So, like last night or Monday night, I made this for a party that I was catering, and we made it times 5. You can imagine it was a huge amount of batter. I'll stop there for a minute, step out of your screen. All right, so the next thing, again, souffle, in order to bring all of this together, we need egg yolks. If you are ever concerned about cooking the egg yolks in this step, you could take this bowl and put it over a bowl of ice for about 2-3 minutes. Just kind of keep mixing it. But this, again, is such a small amount of the base. I think if you work quick enough, you're not going to pre-cook the egg yolks now before they end up in the final recipe. So we're going to put those inside. I'm going to save this spatula. And I'm going to give that a little mix. So everything is, you see, everything is sort of the same consistency. We have basically like a corn pudding right there, thickened with those yolks. And then our very last step, well, we have 2 steps. One that I should have prepped ahead of time that I did not. Butter, nothing but butter. Butter is good for you. Don't be afraid of butter. Butter makes good food and makes things taste great. What I'm doing is I have the souffle mold ahead of time here, kind of ready to go. I'm just taking my finger and putting the butter all over the entire surface, covering everything. Oh, the milk. I did forget the milk, didn't I? I just forgot the milk in my white sauce. I always forget something going on. Okay, it's still hot enough, so we're fine. I always forget something. Zoom is not always mine.
Bob,
Yeah.
Linda asked, do you put the cheese in before the milk? Is that what?
I did. I forgot.
Okay.
We'll go back to the stovetop for 1 second here.
Okay.
I always do something wrong. It's supposed to be my most famous recipe. That's okay. Everything is in there. The only thing I have to be careful of is not to curdle the egg yolk to this point, but that's fine. How we do a chef stick. Linda, thank you. All right, I just want to thicken that for a moment, and then I'll come back to it. I do have, thanks again to Chef Marie, perfect egg white here. How do we know we have perfect egg white? We get like a little Dairy Queen curl on top. Very nice foundation. They're not too dry. I had everything laid out too, and I still forgot. How about that?
It happens.
All right, let's get this a little bit thickened. Anyone have any other cooking questions up to this point?
One of the questions was, if you can't get fresh corn, which would you go with? Would you go with frozen or like a canned corn?
I would probably go with canned corn, because frozen corn, it doesn't have a ton of flavor to it. It actually seems just very watery. Very, very, very watery. Okay. When it's done.
And then does it matter with the butter that you just put around the rim of the casserole or the souffle dish? Does it matter if it's salted or unsalted?
We pretty much cook here exclusively with unsalted butter, so then you have control over the salt content of every recipe. That would be my suggestion. Always go unsalted.
Great. Thanks, Chef.
All right. Now that we forgot the milk, now we remembered the milk, now we're going to go back into the main bowl. Now I am going to ask Chef Marie to just give me a little bit of ice, and I'm going to cool this off before it goes in the oven, because now it's so much hotter. We have an ice machine right behind the camera person. Thank you. Well, this was the trick or the tip that I was telling everybody about, and we do this a lot. We do it a lot because many times in the catering kitchen, we're working rapidly on many recipes and many things at once, but an ice bath always helps to cool things down nicely. But since we did not give the milk the opportunity to thicken, I'll just do this pretty quickly and bring everything down. But you can also see that nothing curdled. We're still fine. It's just that it's loose because the milk went in sort of as an afterthought. As we're waiting for this to thicken up a bit, I think I could start on the peach cobbler, which could not be a more simple recipe, but at the same time, it just is the essence of now. It is the essence of this time of the year. I don't know, when you first came on, I was peeling the peaches. The peaches are beautiful, they're juicy. They're also from, I think they're from a different market, but you know, when you're working with a fresh peach, a pre-stoned peach just means that the peach is going to very easily come away from the stone. But you know, don't be afraid. Like, this peach is really ripe. It just means the sugar is just so primed in that and fantastic. But what I was doing when you all came on is I just took and I was peeling away. I just usually do this. I peel away the first part, and we compost a lot, so we'll put a lot of this stuff right in our compost. But it's just, the skin is coming off so easily. The nice thing about that is I don't think most people like to eat the peach skin, especially in a dessert recipe like this. If for any reason you have a peach and it's kind of ripe and not quite there, the skin might not come off quite as easily, you could score the skin and you could drop it into boiling water for about 30 seconds, pull it out and dip it into an ice bath. And what that does for you is it helps to peel the skin away a lot more easily. Again, this is so nicely ripe, I don't even have to think about that. We'll get this ready and I'll get the peaches in the casserole, and then we'll go back to our corn souffle. Once we get to this point and we're thinking about the pre-stone nature of peach, this obviously is, again, that's just sugar and wonderfulness in every single drop what's going into that bowl. So the first step of that recipe, or it could be the last step, but get the peaches ready ahead of time. Don't get them ready too far in advance. If they're ready too far in advance, they're going to turn on you. If you have a concern about that, you just would add a little bit of acid to the peaches. And I'm using, I know in the recipe it says use a 13x9 or a 12-inch skillet. I want this to be a little bit more like mile high, so I'm using a smaller skillet. This is about a 9-inch cast iron skillet. And I'm just going to do is put the peaches in there. I'm going to put this off to the side. I'll finish the souffle and we'll come back to it. The other nice thing about this recipe, it's super simple, but because the peaches are so ripe, it should bake very quickly because we're not really adding much of anything to this. We're going to add a little bit of cornstarch or brown sugar to it, but not much more of anything than that. All right, let's go back to this semi-debacle and see what happens. It's cooled down. It's probably not quite as thickened up, but that's fine. Again, there are no grand errors in cooking. We can always fix everything. We're going to go back to this. We're going to take our egg white. I'm going to add a little bit of egg white into the souffle mixture. The first step is usually to make the souffle mixture similar in texture to the egg white mixture. In this case, I don't think we have to worry too much because the souffle mixture is pretty light to begin with. We're just going to fold this in here. We don't want the white clouds of the egg white to exist at the end, but at the same time, we need to make sure that every bit of the egg white is incorporated. It's the only thing that's going to help this souffle to rise in the oven. All right, we got all that in. Let's continue to fold. If you master the art of making a souffle, which is really super simple when you remember the milk, but if you master the art of making a souffle, there are so many different flavors, dessert souffles, savory souffles. We just got an order from a client today that's having a party this week. She's going to have a spinach souffle and she's going to have a corn souffle. We make chocolate souffle, pumpkin souffle, Grand Marnier souffle. We're pretty good at making souffles, except on the Zoom call tonight. But again, mastering the art of it, not that difficult. pretty wonderful, makes for a wonderful savory side dish for a dessert. All right, I'm just gonna put this into the souffle mold. And that's gonna go right into the oven. At the very end of our call, we'll take that bad boy out. The main thing with the souffle is that when the souffle goes into the oven, when a souffle goes into the oven, when a souffle goes into the oven, you really don't want to disrupt matters much. The remainder of the cheese is going in there. You don't really want to disrupt matters of the oven. You don't want to keep opening the oven door. You don't want to switch to convection mode or anything crazy like that. The souffle goes in, kind of forget about it. We'll see where we are at the end of the call and see how well we did on the thick stuff right there. All right, I'm gonna make a little bit of noise again on the peach cobbler. It's super simple. The crumble for top is very universal. If you're gluten free, you could swap this out for a 1-to-1 flour. We like Bob's bread mill, but this is a gluten recipe tonight. Super simple. Crumble usually involves butter, sugar, sometimes some nuts, some kind of flavoring. You don't need to like muck it up with a bunch of stuff, let's put it that way. But the butter is gonna go in first, and this is about 4 ounces of butter. I'm gonna put that in first. And again, I'm gonna make a little bit of noise here on the KitchenAid mixer. This time I'm in the stand mixer. I'm gonna use the flat feeder. My parents bought me this mixer when I started cooking in 1991. I had to throw that piece in there. I've been through a lot of mixers since then, but for some reason this one does still stay the same. You see the butter when I threw it in there was very soft, which is what you want. This kind of a crumble is basically like making, we're making a mixture where we want the butter nice and light so that there's some air bubbles in it, so that when the sugar goes into the butter, it's going to help to create a little bit of structure. I have some granulated sugar is going to go in next. And we're going to whip that together. I have already mixed together the vanilla and the almond extract. It calls for a 1/4 teaspoon of each. If you don't like almonds, and you're not going to use any almonds in this recipe at all, skip it here. I happen to love almond and I love vanilla. So I'm going to use a tad of, I have more than I need here. I'm just going to use a tad of it in there. I'll leave the rest out. We're going to let that mix up. I'll show it up on the screen here.
Bob, I know there's a lot of different types of vanilla out there, right? Is there one that you would recommend for a recipe like this, or one that you go to for all of your cooking?
Me, like vanilla is like olive oil, in that if you're really going to taste it, like in this recipe, you're probably really going to taste that flavor. I am very much like a Madagascar vanilla. Usually nowadays, most grocery stores have that. It used to be only some of the food stores had it, but I like that kind of really good quality vanilla. You don't quite need a vanilla bean for this. But I personally do not like to use imitation vanilla. We've used some less expensive vanillas that we bought on the internet, and actually they sell a great vanilla at Costco, but sometimes we would not use that in a recipe where vanilla is kind of a feature. Like in creme brulee, I always use a vanilla bean, scraped, soaked into the cream mixture, because we want the essence of vanilla to be there front and center. So that would be my take on vanilla in general. Use a good quality vanilla. Don't skim. The next thing I'm going to do is just drop in a little bit of all-purpose flour. This is going to kind of bring this together. We're kind of getting like a dough. Again, it's a crisp, but like a dough, like almost like a cookie dough texture. I'm going to put in a pinch of salt. Even in baking, salt is vital to flavor. Salt brings a good background flavor. And then the last, you can see we've got a crumble going there. I'm using almond flour for this because we have almonds as a topping in this recipe. And Chef Marie had our little GoPro going on there. But basically, that's all you want. You really want this to be kind of a crumbly texture when it's done. It's going to bring it together a little bit further, kind of like maybe the size of a small pea. And if you love to cook and bake, this is something you can make a lot of at a time. Stick it in the freezer. Make a 4-times batch. Use what you need today, and then put the rest of it in a Ziploc bag and stick it in the freezer. It's not going to go bad. This is really a very simple sort of crumb topping. I'm going to maneuver some of this together with my hands. You can see what we're looking for is it's coming together like that. So it'll be like a nice little crumble topping. Okay. That is done. We'll move that off to the side for a moment. We'll go back to our beautiful peaches. And to the peaches, you know, this is kind of important to this part of cooking, especially with things that are really fresh in season, fruit that's fresh in season. These peaches are so sweet and wonderful. I don't know how much sugar they need, so you probably want to gauge, like, make this once or make it, and then, you know, gauge like the fruit that you're using, does it need a ton of sweetness to it, or could I just kind of rely on the natural sweetness? So I'm going to add these back into this bowl. I'm not going to add all the brown sugar because I know that these peaches are so sweet. So the recipe itself calls for a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. I'm using a little bit less. And then the two greatest tools in your kitchen, actually, we're going to add some cornstarch that's going to thicken everything. The two greatest tools in your kitchen are your hands, or a lot of times I just do like a little shake method. We just kind of bring all that together. The cornstarch is important because a lot of natural sugars are going to come out of this. So it's going to help to sort of bind all of this together. That was sort of our sweetening and our thickening. Back into our skillet. And now again, this idea of your hands being the best tool in the kitchen, then you would just take the crumble and you would just add the crumble kind of right over the top.
Bob, in the recipe you provided, you mentioned almond meal. Is that what you used in this one?
Almond flour, almond meal, same thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you.
And again, because we're doing almonds on top.
Then I had a question about the type of peach. I mean, obviously there are a bunch of different types out there. There's white, there's donut, there's yellow. Is there one that you prefer to use, or is there, you know, what are the differences between?
I am very much a yellow peach guy, like very much an old school. I know like the donut peaches and the white peaches. I've actually never cooked or baked with a white peach ever. We've done like some sangrias, I think, where we use that as an additive, but I've never actually cooked with those. I am a yellow peach guy. And again, we had a huge basket of these that came from the farmer's market, and every one of them is just as sweet. And I don't know if you could tell on the camera, but the way they came off the pit, it was so simple. I'm going to drop this in the oven behind me when we get closer to the end of the hour. That was the time that you're not supposed to go in the oven because the souffle is doing its job in there, but we'll see what happens. Okay, any questions, comments? Are there any complaints at this point? I hope not.
No complaints so far. Everyone's, I think, enjoying it. Someone had a question that you just put the almonds on top, that when we were talking back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Mary Stevenson asked about almond meal, and that she heard that it needs to be very fresh. Is correct?
Almond meal, I don't know about it being very fresh, but what I would say is get it, use what you need, and put it in the freezer. Any nuts should be held in a freezer or refrigerator so that they do not go rancid. It just makes it, extends the shelf life. Like, especially here, we use pine nuts. We don't use a ton of them, so we buy them in bulk and we freeze them. But most other nuts here, we keep in the refrigerator because we go through them very quickly. It's very hard to make almond meal on your own because if you have almonds, if you have peeled almonds and you try to put them in the food processor or even like in a Vitamix, which I've never done, they'll break down so much, the oils will come out, it becomes so dense. Then you almost get to the point where you have to spread it out and dry it in the oven. But I think the idea of using it fresh is good, but I don't know that it has to be like ultra fresh if you refrigerate it or freeze it.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay, now there was a salad in this menu also, because actually I would eat a tomato salad and a corn souffle. I mean, maybe I would have to have like a piece of beef with that, but that's a pretty good meal. That's a great lunch, actually. So I did throw into this like something super simple, which we make all the time. We actually sometimes mix literally all the things that we're talking about together in a recipe or in a preparation. And you have to understand, I hope that you understand, like as chefs, sometimes we literally just make things up on the fly. It's hard to make up pastry things on the fly, But in savory cooking, Chef Marie, who's standing on the other side of the camera, I mean, she will come in and like look at 4 things that are left over from 2 days ago, and she will make us an amazing lunch out of it, just because it's, you know, it just kind of comes out of you. So when the idea was, or the question was about like a burrata salad, so burrata cheese is just really wonderful, super creamy mozzarella cheese. That's mozzarella as we usually know, fresh mozzarella on the exterior. On the inside, it's like shreds of that mozzarella with cream, also called stracciatella. Kind of has like the texture of a ricotta cheese. But if you cut open a ball of burrata cheese on top of anything, it's amazing. But there's just something about doing that on top of a really great salad, really great garden fresh tomatoes. We have tomatoes here that are from the refugee response. 2 of our chefs in the kitchen live on the west side, and once a week they send us a rundown of what they have for the week. So we ordered some tomatoes from them. Every one of them is impeccable, sweet, delicious. Again, we're in the season. We should be eating tomatoes until Halloween. So I grabbed a yellow, and I have this really beautiful stripe. Actually, the one thing I did ahead of time, I guess I could show you on this one. When I'm cooking with something like this, I use this little tool called a tomato shark. It just helps you get the stem part out of the tomato. It's kind of a clean break. But if you're making a tomato salad, it's the simplest thing in the world. I'm going to use. I just have a paring knife. I'm just going to cut this bad boy in half, and it could be whatever. You can make the slices look however you want. When we make this for a client event, we tend to use different colors. So there's some really great color on the plate. I would lay those down. Somebody's going to eat the rest of the tomato for lunch tomorrow. And you can see the inside of this tomato is just absolutely stunning. Beautiful colors. I think this is called like a sunrise tomato.
Yeah.
Just beautiful. The flavor is intense and terrific. Doesn't need much of anything else added to it. So, you know, have a little bit of fun with it. And we'll use just a little bit also of this plain red. It's a big tomato salad. It should probably be just enough to feed me. All right, come back to this. A little play on color. So you can see, again, there's not a great deal of other elements to this salad, but the flavor benefit, the payoff is going to be fantastic. Put one more right here. Okay. We'll put this one right here. All right. Fresh basil. When you're working with fresh basil, you don't really want to do much of anything else. Do me a favor, can you grab the reduced stuff? With fresh basil, you don't really want to work with fresh basil too far in advance. This basil I took out of the refrigerator about half an hour before we started. You can see it's kind of waning. A good way to store fresh basil is like a potted plant. Store it at room temperature and put it in a little bit of water so that the stems remain hydrated. And this is something that, you know, I would suggest everybody, but something that we do when we're dressing this kind of a salad is you just break the basil up by hand, because the minute that you cut the basil with a knife, which is something we all tend to do, and especially if you try to do it ahead of time, it's just going to oxidize the basil. It'll start to turn black. It'll start to turn black almost immediately. Once it comes in contact with the carbon or the carbon stainless in the knife, in contact with the air, that's just going to happen naturally. All right, basil, unbelievable. Our burrata, our burrata cheese, nothing, just from the grocery store, the Belgioso, fantastic. The other day I bought some more expensive burrata cheese. That was from the grocery store. That was actually in buffalo milk, which is the origin of this style of cheese. It was also delicious, but it was also a lot more expensive. So the ball of cheese is, you want it to stay in the brine. Never get rid of the water if you're only going to use like, you know, part of this or to start with, because you want to make sure, I'm going to cut this open. You want to make sure that the part that's going to stay in the brine, that's what keeps it, that solution kind of keeps it nice and fresh. If I was eating this salad, I would probably cut this in half again. You could put a little tuft of greens in the center of this salad. You don't necessarily need to. And this is as simple can be. We take regular, good quality balsamic vinegar. We reduce it on top of the stove. And that's all you're seeing here. If you don't want to do that, you could just either buy reduced balsamic at the grocery store, or you could just use your favorite balsamic vinegar. This is like the vanilla that Eric mentioned. This is a time where you want to use a balsamic vinegar that matters, something that really tastes great. We use a very nice extra virgin olive oil that we get from a local purveyor. You just need a drizzle on there. And just back to something I mentioned earlier when we were making both the cobbler and the souffle, and that is salt. Salt is definitely always your friend, maybe in moderation, but you need a little bit of salt. And the salt goes on last. The salt goes on right before you're going to serve it because the salt will leach moisture out of the tomatoes. You put the salt on the tomatoes too far in advance, you're going to have a pool of water on the plate. And then maybe, I don't have any right in front of me, but a little bit of cracked black pepper, and that's it. That's literally as simple as it can be. That with a big slice of bread, holy cow, you're set for life. So I think at this point, I don't have anything else to cook, but let's wait a little bit longer. If there's any questions, or if you want to talk about, I don't know, the Blue Streaks football season from 1985, we could talk about that. Anything you want to talk about or ask about.
Well, thank you again, Bob. I would invite anyone who has questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat, and I will ask them on your behalf to Chef Sferra. You clearly have a long and storied career in the culinary industry. How has it changed since you started, what you said 31 years ago to where is now? And then, especially in the last few years, because obviously it's been an incredibly challenging year for everyone, but especially in catering and anyone that does events.
I think, honestly, it started to matter so much more. And I think for me, when I say it matters, like food, food is just like nourishment, and we just take it for granted when we're eating at home if we're not like in a foodie family. But it just started to matter probably in the 90s, pre-Celebrity Chefs, pre the Food Network, in that you saw this happening in Cleveland. You saw like, wow, I'm gonna have something besides like just the famous 3 or 4 restaurants that everybody went to that were like the big dogs. And then you started to get into some local chefs. I think I remember in late 90, I might be wrong on the time frame, but you started to hear about Michael Simon. I knew him when he was working at Players, and he was, I think, a high school kid at Ignatius. But you started to hear about stuff like that. I think that kind of changed the dynamic. So we started to get more of that celebrity profile here in Cleveland. And we had some really good food in Cleveland for a long time that went unnoticed. And then when it started getting noticed all around the country, I think that's when you just saw the food scene explode everywhere. But I think Cleveland, we're right up there with some big dog cities around the country because we've got some great food here. Sadly, we did lose some during the pandemic. My business has always been, in the 10 years that we've been here in South Euclid, the catering business and a pastry shop. The pastry format has expanded over the past few years, but when COVID hit, we literally lost everything. Every event that was planned for a 6-month period, canceled, out the door. Big contracts canceled, done. No backup plan whatsoever. So within probably 2 weeks, we switched to carry out, which we'd never done before. And it was painful. And we came up with some really great fun menus, but it allowed us to really pivot and think about like what, we have the mojo and the sense in this building, like let's get it out to the masses. And we did pretty well. Like it ebbed and flowed. Around holidays, we definitely sold a ton of food, but it just kind of helped get our name out into the marketplace where somebody wasn't just looking for a caterer. And then come May of this year, it exploded in the opposite direction. And Eric has been trying for weeks to get me under control to just do the Zoom class. But the difference is we went from kind of wondering what we should do next. Should we make donuts this week? Should we sell Italian food? To we're busier than we've ever been any year. It's gone bonkers. And we have like 3, 4, 5, 6 events sometimes on a weekend day. And we're just trying to figure out how we're going to get it all done. And the biggest change now is I need people. So I'm kind of finally hit the mark that some other food service people had, that we need some staff in our kitchen, and we need like servers and that sort of thing for when we cater parties out. But we have 5 full-timers here. We had them the day that COVID started. Everyone stayed throughout. We stuck together. It was a terrible haul, but it really, kind of a family group here. So it really worked out very well for us.
Well, we're thankful that it worked out for you. And I know so many people had to pivot very quickly to sustain themselves. And we're glad that it worked out for you. With the change, just out of curiosity, since you had to just change the rate to stuff that was kind of like an ongoing basis, were there recipes that you all created in that interim that you will continue to move forward into your catering business?
Yeah, there's some that are to our detriment. Like we have a wedding this weekend, and they picked a lot of the food that was from our like to-go menu. And some of it was more like intended, like, oh, we're going to make 10, or we're going to make 20 and sell them along with something else. And some of them they're great dishes, and they are on the menu all the time. Marie kind of developed a vegan eggplant dish that's got like an African spice mix on it. It's got a cashew cream on it. And if you're even not a vegan, it tastes like a really wonderful steak. I mean, it's really incredible. One of our other chefs developed a recipe where we take a whole chicken apart, take the skin off the chicken, pound the chicken breast, stuff it, roll it in the chicken skin. Then it's wrapped in plastic. It's sous vide, which is an underwater cooking technique. Then when it comes out of that, it rests, it cools to temperature, and right before we serve it to the guests, it's sauteed so the skin becomes super crispy. And it's just like, we think of a chicken breast, like a stuffed chicken breast is like the driest thing you can imagine. It's just the opposite. It's just succulent, but it's very intense to make those, and it's become very popular. So I got to come up with a plan B for those.
Makes sense.
Everything I should say, and everything in our pastry. So the one good thing is our pastry team kind of pivoted to this to a plan of like shelf-stable products. So when we moved to Lee Road, the name of the business on Lee Road is going to be Soapy, and we developed a line of like cookies and confections and desserts and sweets. Most of them are shelf-stable. Some of them are refrigerated. But it kind of became during COVID our dress rehearsal for Lee Road. We'll also have French pastries, French techniques like croissants and Danish. But the shelf-stable things are really kind of become the signature of the pastry things that we do, being a sablé cookie, which is like a French shortbread cookie. They're packaged beautifully, and it just kind of helps start getting our name out there and moving on their own. So Chef Marie is going to hand me one, and I'll just kind of show everybody. But it just kind of has this cool little boutique-y look to it. And this summer we were selling them here, but we're selling them in some other outlets, selling them online. So again, it kind of became the dress rehearsal for what's going to happen, once we get to Lee Road and we mix this up with our other French pastries and desserts.
Well, I think we're excited to see when you do get to Lee Road. I know I personally am, and I remember when we moved back up to Cleveland, you did a cake for my daughter, and it was absolutely spectacular and it was absolutely gorgeous. So anyone who's interested, Bob's food is absolutely amazing. We have 3 questions, more on the technical side.
Okay.
So the first one, when talking about basil, would using a ceramic knife be any different as opposed to like cutting it, as opposed to using a steel knife? Would start to oxidize it?
Yeah, ceramic knife would help, and that will slow sort of the oxidation. It's still probably going to oxidize because it comes in contact with the air. Even the basil that I rip is kind of starting to do that, but a ceramic knife will definitely slow that. I brought that up especially because when we're doing like a bigger event, somebody might like, I'm going to chop the basil at 4 o'clock and we're going to use it on the plate at 6:15. Well, by the time you get to like 4:20, it's all black in a big clump. So you do have to be careful, but a ceramic knife would help.
Okay. Is there a specific type of basil that you prefer? Is it just a normal sweet basil? I know there's tons of specialty basil out there now. Does it really matter?
Yeah. We use a lot at this time of the year for something like this, like an Italian sweet basil. I love purple basil. I think Marie probably cooks with like Thai basil. Some of the like pineapple basil, some of those things are just cinnamon basil, great flavors. But this, like in the kind of the purest state, I think just like a regular sweet Italian basil. And we do cook a lot of Italian food because we have an Italian influence in this kitchen. But all those other varieties of basil have their, they all have their time and place.
Great. A question from Gene Byrne. As we get closer to fall, can we use apples in lieu of peaches for that cobbler?
Yeah, if you use apples, the one thing you might want to do differently is give them a little saute before you start. Kind of start the cooking process before you go in the oven. You could do that, so you kind of have everything ready to go, saute them maybe for 5 minutes, and then get your crumble on it, put the whole thing in the oven. An apple is just a much harder fruit, and again, as you probably all could tell, these peaches were all really super juicy and ripe.
Is there a type of apple that you suggest using above another?
I love like a Honeycrisp apple. I love an Empire apple. I really love a Granny Smith apple. But a hard apple, one of the reasons why you might want to saute it a little bit first, a hard apple to me is the best route to go because it's a hard apple that's also got some sourness to it because it's you have more control over, putting in some cinnamon or some brown sugar or some regular sugar, but you're still going to get that really nice bite of the apple flavor in there.
Okay. So a question more on the catering side of your business. I know that you catered stuff at John Carroll. You were so kind to do an alumni couples program a number of years ago. What's the largest event that you have ever catered?
What is the largest event we ever catered? The largest event we ever catered, we've catered some benefits that might have been for like 400, 450. And usually I kind of pride myself on like we don't get too far in over our head. Like we catered a wedding this summer for 225 people. It was a person that both the mother and the daughter used to kind of work for us part-time. That was a tough one because it was plated. So for us, like a plated dinner for 225, 250, that's a little bit of an extension. But when you get into a benefit or a setting where you could do like kind of like staged food in several different areas, I think we really kind of shine at that, and we could do a larger number. It's just a little bit easier to handle than having to put all the hot food out at one time. I'm kind of not a huge fan of like big long buffet lines. I try to avoid those.
Now, and when you move to your new space, will that change the numbers of people that you can serve, or do you feel like you'll still kind of be in that sweet spot that you found?
It will. You're like a TV commercial for me. So one of the things that I put into the kitchen on Lee Road is some very large commissary style equipment. If anyone's on the call that knows anything about food service, we put in like a tilt skillet where you can make 5 gallons of soup at a time. We put in something called a tilt skillet, where you could cook like, 45, 50 short ribs at a time. We put in a steam jacket kettle where you could cook 5 gallons of soup at a time. So I put in the infrastructure something to make the catering process faster, because the food in-house will be more on the fast casual and with a high influence on the pastry and like pastry related savory dishes as well. So we're not really relying, it's not gonna be a restaurant. We're not relying so much on some of the equipment for like the everyday.
Okay.
And so we will increase that we could cater for.
Awesome. So Jeff Ria and Renee Bognar from class of 80 and 87 was wondering, what is your go-to meal when you are cooking at home?
Go-to meal? Tomato sandwich. We love tomato sandwiches. So we have a community garden. We have amazing tomatoes. So it's this time of the year, like a tomato sandwich, which is toasted whole wheat bread with mayo and sliced tomato with sea salt. Amazing. Fresh corn from the market. My go-to is usually like Italian. So bolognese. I'll make bolognese in the winter and put it in the freezer, but I could eat that any time of the day or night. I love like old school, good Italian food. So those two would probably be main go-to. Bolognese would not be like a fast, Tuesday night go-to because you need several hours to make it, but pull it out of the freezer, defrost it, and use it.
Okay. So what Mary Stevenson asked, she said she very much enjoyed this evening. Have you considered offering cooking classes at your Lee Road location?
Yes, and we will. We will do that. We did that for years. That did also shut down during COVID. So believe it or not, we've done a lot of Zoom classes, but I think on every Zoom class, I messed up one thing. So I'm getting retired from this format. but we did a lot of cooking classes. We've done them here. We had a cooking class for St. Gabriel's here at the retreat recently. We had 15 folks in the kitchen, which is about our maximum here. And it was just a lot of fun. They're just a lot of fun. The in-person classes, you know, it's great. You share stories, tips, camaraderie. They're always a lot of fun. And in our kitchen, usually we cook for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then we sit and have dinner and a glass of wine and kind of enjoy the whole experience.
Awesome. I'll let you focus on getting that out of the oven, not burn yourself. I have a couple more questions
Sure.
from
You're there, by the way. This is a
wow.
souffle. Everything works, even though I put the milk in after the fact. This is really wonderful, super simple. Go ahead with the question.
So Mary Kay, she asked, she missed the name of your location, which is Sophie, right? And then where on Lee is it going to be located?
So Sophie is going to be between Meadowbrook and Silsbee, and it's right next to the wine spot, which is kind of made a really great name for itself over like the past 8 or 9 years. Mm-hmm. It'll be right there on Lee Road.
Great. Linda Dugovac obviously love this because she wants to know if you would ship to Chicago.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. This would play well.
One question, I know when we do these programs, and we are so fortunate that we have a wonderful alumni community that are willing to help with these. I always am interested in the John Carroll story and how John Carroll shaped our alums in their field or in their volunteerism. Can you tell us a little about how John Carroll shaped you as a leader, either in the culinary industry, or I know you are incredibly involved within the community as well?
I think, you know, honestly, and probably before I got to be so busy in the past few years, I was kind of a frequent, you know, guest at Carroll for different things. Now when I go for things, I feel like I'm like the oldest person in the room by like 15 years. But it just kind of comes out of you when you talk to a group of students. But, you know, I think John Carroll mostly just probably centered me, and it gave me so much focus, especially in leadership. You know, it was just very exciting. I played football, I was an RA, I was involved in student government. But for me, it was sort of like everything that I loved growing up and in high school, it just kind of continued. And there was a good camaraderie or a good sort of community around me that supported that. You know, it was like, go all in and, you know, be a student leader. I know, you know, John Carroll kind of shaped my idea for volunteerism, which I don't know why. Probably that came more from my father, but just helping other people, it's just natural. You know, you got 2 extra tomatoes, give them to your next door neighbor, but to the, you know, 20, 50, 100 times over, that idea of volunteerism. And if you've got a good life and you know, you're on the right path of things, share that knowledge, share that teaching, share that passion, whatever it might be. I do a little bit of that here in this kitchen, though I'm the old boy, but it just, I think John Carroll shaped me to understand that that's so easy to do. It just kind of comes out of you again, sort of like as a servant leader or, you know, a path of just like service, not difficult for me. So I loved all of my time with John Carroll. Every time one of my cousins, nieces, nephews comes along, I tell them they should try John Carroll. We had a young man here that was a class of 86, the son of a class of 86, my class. He worked with us this summer, and we kept telling him they should go to John Carroll, but they lived 2 minutes away, and he said, under no circumstances, too close to home. But Carroll, I think leadership and stamina also, all those things kind of help shape me for everything that I'm doing. Hard to say if it really in this career so much, but it was really all sort of the foundation from, you know, what I learned during my Carroll years. It just kind of helped me. And again, I think stamina, that fits in there somewhere, is a big part of it. Like, sure. Get up and do it.
Well, we are fortunate that you chose to go to John Carroll, very much so. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. We'll go here and wrap up shortly. Bob, if someone is interested in learning more about culinary occasions, how can they learn a little bit more about you as a chef and about your company?
Sure. Well, you know, at the top of the call, we were talking a little bit about moving, and I shared with Eric that we thought we were going to be there, but we're not in our new space yet. So we have a lot of things in flux. So we have a very simple website right now, culinaryoccasions.com. We don't have a ton of content on there because we're waiting to adjust to some new content, but that would be a good starting point. There's an info section on that. You can just send me a message that way. The new space on Lee Road, again, the physical structure is going to be called Sophie La Gourmande. And we have also there's a website for Sophie La Gourmande. Eventually those two websites will merge, but you could go that route as well. And again, send me questions. My email address is chefbob@culinary-occasions. You could send me a question or anything you'd like to know there. I've never been able to mentor a Carroll student to choose a career in the culinary arts, but I'm more than happy to share information about doing that.
Well, thank you, Bob. And we are truly appreciative that you're willing to spend a night with us this evening. So thank you.
You're very welcome. This was quite fun.
Do you want to show the cobbler real quick and then we'll wrap it up?
There you go.
There it is.
And it looks delicious. Absolutely
So the
delicious.
apple cobbler around, the peach cobbler around the edges is bubbling up. Maybe about 5 more minutes in the oven, but basically that's where you are. A souffle means blown up. It is no longer blown up. It's starting to fall. When you have a souffle, you got to eat it within the first minute.
Fair enough.
Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you all again. And thank you, Bob and Chef Marie for joining Chef Bob this evening and helping with the camera. We appreciate you doing so. Before we conclude, as I always do, I like to give you all an update on some other upcoming programs that you can join with other alums. So we hope that you save the date for our newest tradition on September 25th, which is our Blue Chic Supper Club. The concept is simple. One alum or a couple hosts a dinner party and invites 2 or more of their alums to attend. Each attendee donates the cost of their dinner back to our alma mater. It could be pizza or wings or surf and turf. It's completely up to the host. You should all have seen an email gone out, I believe, this morning about this program, and we hope you are interested in taking advantage of this way to bring our community back together. We're hoping that a number of Blue Chic Supper Clubs will take place all on the same day. Also, I ask that you save the date for homecoming and parents or family week, I should say. Highlights for the weekend include our annual Graduates of the Last Decade on Thursday, September 30th, our Athletics Hall of Fame dinner on Friday, October 1st, and our JCU Alumni Association Awards dinner on Saturday, October 2nd. Prior to the football game, you can gather with friends and family and fellow alumni for a Blue Chic tailgate over in the Belvoir lot. More information will be shared with our community in the very near future. We are also welcoming back a number of alumni groups, including our men's alumni soccer team, our U Club, and Pershing Rifles. And finally, later this fall, be on the lookout for other A.C.E.S programs and other educational programming. We will focus on the Cuyahoga Valley National Park and Erie Canal, current trends in communication and marketing, lessons from industry leaders in nonprofit administration, and programs focusing on K-12 education. We'll also be bringing back our popular alumni author series with a dive into the paranormal just around Halloween. You can find out about these programs and register for all of them, including our alumni author series, scholarly luncheons, A.C.E.S, and our alumni spotlight events at jcu.edu/alumni. Additionally, we invite you to view recordings of our previous programs on our JCU Alumni Association YouTube channel. You can view our extensive library, including this one we'll get up very soon, just by searching John Carroll University Alumni on YouTube. And finally, please consider a charitable gift to John Carroll in support of our students, faculty, and our entire campus community. If you've already made a gift this year, thank you, and we appreciate your generosity. If you have not, I hope you join me in supporting JCU so that we can continue to deliver an outstanding generation or expanding education for our current and future Blue Streaks. You can make a donation by visiting jcu.edu/give. Again, thank you, Chef Bob. Thank you, Chef Marie. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Take care, be well. Most importantly, please stay safe, and onward on, John Carroll.